So welcome to Bunny's Designs. This is a live stream and live peoples on Impromptu Sunday. I want to have a bit of a natter about pastels and I've got these four, and it's from an oil pastel which is not water soluble, a pastel bar, an art bar that is very similar to the oil pastel but it is water soluble, and then we've got an Inktense block which is almost like a pastel but it's water soluble, and at the other end we have a pastel block. But you can actually blend all these. This one you can blend with mineral spirits or odorless terps, and you can get a very nice blend if you want to blend them. So you could use them in a watercolour way. Your mineral spirit runs through and then it dries, so it's not good for colour books, but you can blend the colours together. But the best way to use these, if I can put my hand on it, which I can't, is in a colour book. If you're using it in a colour book, is just to use it. How strange. I seem to have lost my colour book. Seem to have lost my colour book. Oh, it's the ones with the red poppies. See, this is why you should put things back in the proper order. So this was a play. If you use it in a colour book, use it in an old colour book, a cheapy one, because the colour will go across to the other side, and if you're doing both sides then you're okay. This was done at the beginning of the year, the 31st of the 12th, and that was with the children's cheapy pastels. But if you look on the other side, that particular one has gone through. So it's not ideal. It's really designed for canvases and primed oil-based for oil paint. So if you prime things with gesso, actually that's one that I might do. Actually, I could leave that one out. I think I've put a couple of stickers, but I really liked the vibrant colours. And this is with 3 colours, I think. And this particular one here was made with this colour set from Derwent, and I used 2 greens and 3 reds, and if you can see the reds, there's hardly any used from them. So all I've done is use the sides, so I've just kind of used the sides so they are the same length as one that's not been used. So they're very, very vibrant, and then you can blend them together. Now you can use the same mineral spirits, but I wouldn't do that on a colour book, because if I look on the other side, although this is single-sided, there doesn't seem to be anything on there. But I would think over time, this is oil, it will contaminate the page in front. Now if you could do 2 things, you can varnish them and seal them if you can be bothered, but I don't think I could. But you could put tracing paper, or again, if you buy a roll of kitchen greaseproof paper, we used to call it, or baking parchment, cut a roll cheap, and you can actually either just stick them in, or if it's an exact size, or there is a little bit of a gap there, you could sellotape this in and it would become a page, and you don't have to worry about it. and you could do that in between each side, but some of the patterns I don't like. So do it on a colour book that you don't like. Now, I've actually grown on me is this book. It was one of the first ones I bought, and it was £1.99, so it's not very precious, but it's growing on me. There are some really nice ones in there, and then there are some ones which I don't think I'll ever do. But it's quite good practice to use pages you don't really like. Oh, hi Judy, welcome to Bunny's Designs. So that's the oil pastels. So they can be used in a colour book, but they are not designed for a colour book. But you can play with them, and then there's no reason why you can't draw a simple pattern after a little while when you get used to them. So these will then take you onto your own art. You can use them for mixed media, and if you have some kind of coating on the page, or if it's just I made one out of wallpaper, so it's quite easy to you don't mind if you destroy it, but they're perfect for mixed media and very vibrant colours, or you can use them paler if you mix them with some kind of solvent. So that's the oil ones. Now all these react with water. They are not watercolours, but they react, apart from these, they react with water like a watercolour. So on the back of this one, this is the oil one. If you look at the front picture, you can use it very similar to what I did with the poppies. And there is a video on there about that, or you can optically mix them and scratch them together. You can mix them and put the black over to use them for scratching. And Derwent have brought out a scratchy tool with lots and lots of different shapes to scrape for scraping. Or you can optically mix them, so that means that you can put a blue and a yellow together in dots, and when you look at it, it looks green, but technically they're not. There isn't a green on there. And Surratt and a gentleman called Cross kind of did that in the Impressionists. So there's dotting, and then if you can put the solvent in there and kind of mix around or rub round and kind of do all sorts of things and rub with your fingers. So if we look on the back of the Derwent Art bars, and these are very similar to Neocolor 2's, Faber-Castell have them as well, and they're like a watercolour crayon. If I can find them. I've only got 6, but Faber-Castell do them as well. Very well pigmented. The Caran d'Ache are very well pigmented, and these are very well pigmented as well. Any really good quality watercolour crayon is very well pigmented. And I've scratched mine onto little squares so that I can use them when I'm out and about, and I can leave the tin and the art bars at home, because the Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2's will melt in very warm weather, because I've had them melt together. So if you look on the back of this one, we can do what we can do with the oil ones. We can blend them together, scratch them over the top. We can do the scratchy thing, and that's actually the tool that Derwent have, and it has another double end with all sorts of other different scratchy areas on as well. And then we can optically mix them with our fingers, but what we also can do is react them with water. So whatever Caran d'Ache Neocolor 2's can do, these can do. But they can also do what the art bars do. They can form a thick layer for scratching, and the Neocolor 2's can do that, and I presume that any watercolour crayon can do that. But I mean, I would not do that with these because they're a bit too expensive. I would use ordinary Crayolas for that, because you don't really want to do anything with water, and these are water based. So you can use them in, and there's 4 different sections. There's brights, pales, earths and darks, and there's 72 in the full set. Now I've got about 40. Now I did put them in order. I'm going to create a a kind of a water a space for them. So what you can do is use a paintbrush and use them as a solid art bar, or you can scratch with them and then you can manipulate the colours. Very much like the Near Colour 2, scratch a bit of colour and then use the paintbrush to manipulate them with a paintbrush. So they're the Derwent Art bars, which is a watercolour crayon. So then this is a block, and this is an Inktense block. So they've got Inktense pencils, but these are blocks. And again, if you look at the back, we can do the same we can with the art bars and the solid crayons. We can mix them together and push them about. We can scrape them and make bigger watercolours. These will actually stay on material, so you can use them on silk, and they've gone ceramics, I think, as well. They've gone quite a lot of different medias. These people paint with stones, I think, as well. I think I've seen that. They paint pebbles and stones with them, and they're very vibrant. They're a lot more vibrant than a traditional watercolour, which is what these are. They react with water, so again you can take the stick and you can work with a paintbrush off the stick and create a watercolour effect, but they're very, very bright. And you can also scrape them into a well and make a wash, a watercolour wash for watercolour paper. So again, these are good. They're good for small areas or slightly larger areas in a colour book. And then again, when you're proficient in this and you want to start doing your own art, these will take you on to that without buying any other products. And I like that idea as a tight Yorkshire lass. So lastly, we have a pastel. And they all look very similar. They're all in stick form. That's why I chose these. They're all sticks. They're all big sticks, about finger length sticks. These are different colours. They're not quite as vibrant as these, but you can still get some vibrant colours. And this is a traditional pastel, which is used for pastel paper. This you want to use watercolour paper. This one is for pastel paper. But this will also react with water, and this is what I use a lot. And I used, I think I did, if I find the Daydreams colour book. Oopsie. I think it's just slipped away. I can't find the Daydreams colour book. And the Daydreams colour book is really nice paper. Oops. So we have, I can't remember which one it was now. I think it was this one. Bear with me 2 seconds. So that was the Inktense pastels, and scratched a bit of colour, and then I used a blending tool. I tell a lie, that was with the pastel pencils. I do tell fibs sometimes. That was Inktense blocks. I think this one is Inktense pastels. So scratching a bit of pastel and then manipulating it with a water brush to give a very soft effect. So it's not a watercolour, but reacting with water, it acts like a watercolour. So I can scratch on top of here and this will reactivate. It's like the art bars. It's not like the Inktense blocks. So this particular page was used with Inktense blocks. So I scratched a bit of colour and manipulated it with a brush. Now this will not reactivate again. This is it's solid now. The very dark areas probably will, but if you react all of the colour with water, it's permanent. So you could work over the top and not disturb anything underneath. But I love the fact that although these are Inktense and they're very vibrant, solid, really vivid colours, I could get some very, very soft pastel pale colours, which I didn't expect. And lastly, we say we've got these, and these look very similar. They're in a block form, and again you can scratch some of this directly into a little well, like this, and you can make, because it's a pastel, any pastel you can scratch into water and you can make a watercolour wash, or you can make a smaller amount and you can have it just as a little bit of a watercolour, like I use it. And again, they are traditionally supposed to be used with with a pastel paper, which is a rough paper with the tooth. But the beauty of them is you can use them all in your colour books quite sparingly, and normally reacted with water, because then you don't need to spray hairspray or anything on them. And then when you need to, or you feel that you want to be more creative, you could get some pastel paper for these two, or you could get watercolour paper for these two. So this one reacts on watercolour paper and on pastel paper, depending on if you want to use it dry or if you want to use it wet. So the Inktense blocks, and especially getting the very pale colours, are extremely versatile. Are the Inktense pencils as well. But I love the blocks. So I just wanted to show the differences and the similarities and the uses from the different kinds of pastels. They're all pastels, but they all react slightly differently. So I hope you found that interesting. And of course the extension on this side here would be the Crayola crayons. An ordinary child's crayon would be here, because that won't blend well, and it's a step further that way. It's a harder pastel. It doesn't have as much pigment, but it has a lot of binder, and that's the child's crayon. An ordinary crayon would be here, and then we have the oil pastels, which have the oil in them, and they have a lot more pigment, so they're more expensive, and you can blend them. Then you have the art bars, where you can blend them, but you can also use water to make them a watercolour. The Inktense blocks will blend as a dust, as a pastel, but then you can act them with water to make a watercolour, and the pastels will be a pastel on pastel paper, or they'll go on watercolour as well. So they're all kind of in a series, and they all look very similar, but they all react differently. So I hope that wasn't too confusing. Has anybody got any questions? Yes, it does look like I've turned into a Derwent freak. I do love Derwent products. The Derwent products have got the best pigment, and they're one of the oldest companies on the planet, so they're going to be good. They have to be good. And I keep looking at other things, but it's a big investment for me, but I trust them. I always trust them. The art bars had a bit of a bad write-up, but people weren't using them right. They are a professional art bar, and so professional artists can kind of be a bit kind of fussy, but I think these would be perfect for colour books and mixed media, because you can use them in so many different ways, and they're very similar to and vibrant like the oil pastel, but they react with water, so they're easy to use and they're more versatile. They will go on a thicker paper, they will go on an art board, or they'll go on watercolour paper, or they'll go in a colour book. It's all about technique and how you use the product, but I would say these two are the most versatile. But of course I do love my pastel pencils and my pastels, and now I've fallen in love with these. So I haven't played with these quite as much. I'm going to do a colour book, some colour book pages with the art bars, because again they're so underrated, like the Derwent pencils. Very, very underrated, and a very versatile product, especially when you think you've got professional watercolours here. That's a big thing to think about. So you can use them to play with and get going, and then when you want to turn a little bit more professional and you want to start doing a little bit more to expand your art, you don't have to go buy other products. You know, this will do both. You will get some wonderful effects in your colour books, and then you will get some fantastic effects in your mixed media and your art. Oh, hi Grammy, hi Jennifer, anybody else that's popping in? Welcome to Bunny's Designs. So I do an awful lot of research. I watch lots of YouTube videos before I buy anything. Because what the things, and most of the things I buy I can pass on to my girls. Because I don't have a lot of money to waste. Nobody ever sends me anything free. I just do a lot of research and I decide I can get the most out of it. I'm a tight Yorkshire lass. I am that tight Yorkshire lass. I want every scrap of colour, and that's why I love the art bars, because you know you're going to use every tiny bit of all these pastels. Nothing's going to waste. Even the crumbs you can put in a well, and when I say a well I mean this kind of well here. And of course the Inktense, they do give you, and I'll show very quickly. I made these little tags, and I did put, and I knitted them upside down then. I did make I used the bottom of one, and this is just masking tape, and then I put these little tags, little post-it sticks. I thought they were quite pretty, and I put a bit of sellotape over the top, so they're not precious, but it works really well. And I did the same for the other one, and I used, my sellotape's come off a bit, I only did them yesterday, and I used, see, I quite actually like taking them out, so I can show you very quickly. These little wells here are designed to take the pastel, which is pure colour. Now you could look at it as pure watercolour if you want to. Technically it isn't, but there is no reason why you can't take your scalpel blade, which of course I can't see now I want to. There it is right in front of me. And scratch colour into here. It's about 30 scrapes. Same with the pencils. All the pastel pencils, the Derwent watercolour pencils and the Inktense pencils, you can scratch like this and then with a brush mix to a wash. And then you can use a bigger brush and do a beautiful sky or sea wash on a big watercolour pencil, a watercolour paper. So these are designed for professional watercolours. Now when you use the Inktense, it will be set. If you use the pastels or the art bars, it's a watercolour, it will reactivate, it will move again. But if you use this as a wash, it will stick. Once these are dry, then as a wash they will not move. That's why they are used for materials. So that's what these wells are for. So at the back of this one, it was the cardboard that the pastels actually came in. They were wrapped in Amazon in cardboard. This one, and I drew round the flaps. I've actually got another two if I need. I drew round the flap, and then used just ordinary masking tape. And just before I stuck it down, the end piece, I just put the two little stickies together to make my butterflies. So I was so impressed with these bars when I did this picture, this particular one. The only thing in doing that is you've made it a little bit proud. I've made mine, I've not put mine inside, I've put mine on the bottom. So I've made it a tiny bit proud. So the other thing you have to do, which I would advise anyway, is an elastic band round the lid. because mine dropped and the cat broke a couple. But they're really quite nicely in there now, but you can pick them up one-handed and they are not going anywhere. They are solid because they have that cardboard behind. And now the other one is the same, because when you buy them it doesn't have the bottom one, and you can either trap the little butterflies underneath, or so I would always put an elastic band over the top. But the Inktense blocks, I would say, are my favourites at the moment, because and my Derwent watercolour pencils, purely because for versatility. So the Derwent watercolour pencils can get very, very dark, and the Inktense blocks can get very, very pale, and they will do a bigger space as well. But I was quite impressed with the Inktense blocks. So it depends on the size of your colour books, whether you work big, whether you work small, whether you work vibrant. And again, I haven't used the bigger ones in this book, but I will do. I'm going to do one with the art bars. I think I'm going to do this one with the art bars. In fact, I could do that next. I like this particular page. I've used it before. I photocopied it and used it quite a few times, but I think it's time I use the original one now. So that's the end of this particular quick video, hopefully, about the differences between the different pastels and what you can use them, but they would all work in something like this. It's single-sided, and it's got some big spaces and some small spaces, and you could have vibrant colours or pale colours depending on what your choice was. So thank you for watching.